Today we wanted to talk about a topic that we've never discussed here on the farm. It's never been talked about, which is harmony. Has anyone ever heard a topic here on the farm about harmony? Now, do you think it makes sense to talk about harmony in our lives? So, because more and more we've been discovering in our lives as a farm, as the family of hope, that harmony is something that is part of our charism, of our life. It is deeply embedded and implicit in what is our very essence of being a family, of our shared hope, our unique way of living, and our way of presenting ourselves to the world. But we have often thought to ourselves, what exactly do we truly mean when we speak of harmony? Harmony just as beauty, as having good and better things. No, right? Because sometimes with very simple things in poverty we can live in harmony, isn't that true? So we thought like this. Actually, we didn't just think, we realized that harmony in the family of hope should be like the coherence of the life choice we made. Because I can't imagine that someone who chose God could dress any way they want, for example. Right? So we think like this, harmony starts with us. It starts with how I present myself as someone who wants to choose God in my life. Regardless, as we already talked about yesterday, Nelson talked, Frei talked, everyone has already talked about it. Regardless of my state of life. From the moment I made a choice for God, when I made a choice for God to live in a community, you understand? I have to be a different person. I don't have to be a better person than anyone else, but I do have to be a different person. I have to show with my life, not just with my words, not just by saying, oh, Momai, I made a choice for God. I'm at this stage of my journey within this community, but to express it through my very life. So we try to be careful with the way we dress. So I can imagine, for example, a member of the Esperanza family who dresses any which way, a woman from the Esperanza family, who dresses in a way that draws everyone's attention with tight clothes, with short clothes, with clothes showing here and there. For example, I think we've never said that someone from the Esperanza family can't wear a mini skirt or that a man can't walk around shirtless here and there in any environment. So I think we've never talked about that. But each person is aware that they should be different. And when we talk about this topic, when we want to talk about this theme of harmony, we also want to touch on these points in a way, because we've already seen that this happens in our lives. And we're seeing that this needs to be talked about, so that we become aware that harmony should be the expression of the choices we make in our lives. Then we should live in harmony on the farms, in our community life, also as a form of education. Because we receive young people, for example, who came from the world of drugs, who came from depression, and who came from the world of drugs, for example, who came from the world of depression. What is, for example, their favorite color? Black, right? Dark colors. What is the symbol most commonly used in the life of a drug addict? The skull, right? Death, you see? Because it comes from darkness, because it comes from death, isn't that true? But we shouldn't show that in everything in our lives, right? I mean, our life should be harmonious, and harmony is colorful. It's not just black. Harmony is life. So I'm not going to wear a shirt with a skull symbol on it because I want to show life, right? Just imagine if I'm there showing off, wearing a huge skull print. Am I really dressing in a coherent way? Is that really what I want to show? For example, another thing just to mention, since we got into this topic, a person who is coming out of a drug experience, who has left that life behind, who lives in a community where they want to help many people get out of drugs. So is it right for me to wear a t-shirt with a huge marijuana leaf printed on the front? But in the world, they sell this kind of clothing, don't they? A ton of it, right? And sometimes people buy it completely innocently, but we always need to become more aware that this isn't right. But if I'm against that, if I'm trying to help people get out of that life, how can I dress like that? How am I going to convey that? So also in our homes, right? Have you ever thought about someone coming in to recover? And they come into our homes where there's no harmony in the garden. So the person arrives there and comes right into the house. It's just like that, just rocks, just dryness. Just recently, we did an experiment in Guatemala, arriving at a place where everything was dry, where there were only thorns, only dust, and we saw how we were able to transform that place. We saw that there was a lot we couldn't do there during the construction because the house wasn't finished. We couldn't go inside to do any work because that was the builder's job. If we went in, we'd end up getting in the way more than helping. So what did we think? Let's work outside. We started together by cutting down the thorns, burning that pile of thorns that had already been cut and was dry. That's why yesterday people were saying even Irasi became a pyromaniac, because we wanted to give that place a new look. So even if it hurt, even if we got injured now, for example, when people walk there on our farm in Guatemala, their feet don't get full of thorns anymore because we removed those thorns that used to get into our shoes and burned them, we threw them away. It's also about valuing what we have, what belongs to us. For example, when we arrived there in Guatemala, I'll just talk about a more recent experience, we saw that the nature there, even though it was dry, even though there were only thorns, it still had its own beauty because it was nature. God didn't make anything ugly, right? So we tried to see what was beautiful in all of that. So the first thing we realized was that we shouldn't cut down all the thorns because we should leave them since they are part of the local vegetation. So we started leaving the thorns. From the moment we started leaving the thorns and just trimming them a bit to make a nice looking bush, right? The thorns began to bloom and we saw that they have a beautiful flower. Now, everyone who saw the photos can see that behind the stage, for example, on the inauguration day, there was a huge bouquet of flowers, of yellow flowers. That was a thorn bush. It was there, planted in its place. And we saw that that thorn bush would bloom. And we had no idea, right? And I remember the first day Iresi said, Lucia, did you see that little yellow flower that's blooming on that tree? I said, I hadn't noticed. She said, Lucia, it's a thorn bush, the same kind we cut down. And we went to see, and it was one of those thorn bushes, you know? And it was blooming. Then we thought, what else do we have here to start the garden? Because when we started there, we didn't have any money. Later, a bit of providence came our way. Providence started to arrive, right? But we didn't have any money. So we thought, let's work with what we have here on site. So since we moved the earth from the lake, we made a hill, so we wouldn't have to gather everything up and take it all away. Also because it took a lot of our effort, but we thought, let's just leave a little hill here, and later when we have money for grass, we'll put in the grass. But what else do we have here? So we thought about transporting those agaves. There are a lot of agaves over there, the same kind that are really expensive to buy here in Brazil. I, who am always buying plants, you usually pay around 100 to 200 reais for an agave that size, like the ones we have there. So we did a lot of experiments. The girls, on the first day, they went to collect the agaves, spent an entire morning just to get one agave out. That's because they got pricked by thorns, because this happened, that happened. Afterwards, we asked a worker for help, their Candelario, and suddenly he went, and we had brought about 15 different kinds of tools to cut the agave. And it was tough, with rope, with knives, with everything you can imagine. And Candelario just showed up. He took a stick from a tree right there in nature with his machete. He trimmed it, made a point, and with that stick he started removing them. 1, 2, 3, 10 agaves. He took them out quickly in about half an hour. Something that took us the whole day to do. But just to say that it's also about making use of what we have in the place. That is also living in harmony. It's not about arriving somewhere and immediately putting in everything new, bringing in everything from outside that I can get and putting it in that place. No, living in harmony is about harmonizing myself with what is already there in that place. It's like living in enculturation. We say it like this. Today, Carla shared her experience here and talked about how hard it was to adapt to the culture in the Philippines because she thought she knew how to meditate, that she knew how to speak, that she knew how to deal with children. And suddenly she had to let go of everything, start from scratch, and see how Filipinos really are. How do they live there? Also in Guatemala, we had this experience, not only living in harmony like that, but also with the people, because we would arrive with our own ways and often shocked people. So we tried to adopt a different approach. So living in harmony in the place where you arrive, on the farm where you are responsible, in the community where you live, means respecting what exists in that place. So we see that it is an educational approach. Today, when I was talking to Irasi, for example, she said, look, Lucia, we have to show that it is also a way of educating. For example, we want to get our people out of the world of drugs, of depression, out of that darkness. So to also bring about this respect, respect for nature, respect for beauty. Look, I remember that the first experience at the Women's Center that I had when we started the Women's Center was making all the beds. We lived in a tiny little apartment like this in the city. Cecilia knows very well what it was like. It was right next to her house. But it was a very small apartment and we had 12 beds there. There were 12 of us living there. And everything was really simple in the beginning, right, Frei? All the furniture was made of pine. Today we have furniture made from a better wood. But in the beginning, it was all pine, right? But we tried, to stretch the bed sheets, but really stretch them tight, to have all the bed sheets the same, everything arranged harmoniously. We lived with a lot of simplicity, and we still do to this day. We try to live simply on the farms, but to use that simplicity in harmony. And today, for example, there's a woman in recovery who still lives with us, Tida, who has been with us for 19 years now. She's been with us since the beginning. It's going to be 20 years soon. She said that when she arrived, she came from San Jose dos Campos and she was living on the streets. She drank a lot and couldn't work anymore, and she was always passed out on the streets there in San Jose. And she said that what impressed her the most when she arrived was seeing the bed sheet. Everything was perfectly tucked in, everything neat and tidy, So we see how it catches your attention, the beauty, the harmony that it brings back. We also see, as we come to understand more and more in our community life, in our family, in hope, that harmony is a way to bring us into intimacy with God. For example, so many times people come here to Padrinas, and not just because of the mountains or everything else, but because of how we did things here in Padrinas. If you look at the construction of this hall, there was this aqueduct here, really old, right, Frei? And it was something isolated in the middle of the woods. Anyone who knew Pedrinhas before this was built knew that this aqueduct was just sitting here in the middle of nature. Then an architect came along, Michel Pochet, or that other one, Francis. And I remember that. I think I was there at the time. I remember hearing him say that we could make use of this here and how we could make use of it. And today we can see, look, by respecting what was here without destroying it, look at everything that has happened here in Pedrinhas. We can see it wasn't done because here it's all mountainous, right? So if you looked at it with disrespect, like, oh no, you can't do anything with everything like this. Mountainous, right? With everything like this on a slope. So let's bring in the machines, make everything flat, make everything level. But no, everything was respected, every little thing. So a lot of water flows through here. So even in diverting the course of the water, you can see here on the side how there are these stone structures that let the water be diverted and carry it along the path it used to follow. So for us to take the opportunity to teach the boys, the girls, the volunteers, the people who arrive here at Fazenda da Esperança, at the Family of Hope, this way of being intimate with God in harmony, respecting nature, respecting what already exists, not overriding it, not putting anything aside, but making use of what is there so we can see what God wants from that. Then like this, it helps us to enter into intimacy with God, right? Because we see so many people who arrive here or at several of our other farms who say that just by looking at the beauty of the place, the way the gardens are maintained, right? Look, for example, there are people, I've seen Frei get upset many times when we go to arrange the hall here. Even at Pedrinhas, when the chairs were bought, they were all one color, then another batch was ordered, and it never comes in the same color, right? It came in a different color. Then another batch was ordered, and it came in yet another color. So there are people, for example, who think that arranging the hall just means putting one chair next to another, but in reality, that's not the case. When we arrive and see a blue chair next to a green one, another green one in a different shade, and another in yet another color, and another in a different color, I don't know how you feel in your heart, but for me, it's like it stirs something up. It doesn't let me be at peace, It creates a storm inside me, a restlessness, There's something that doesn't let me get back into the rhythm. So we also see that harmony helps us achieve balance. For example, if you arrange things here in the hall right now, all the chairs are this color. How beautiful it is to look and see all the chairs in the same color. If you go upstairs, you'll see all blue chairs in the cafeteria. Then you get to another one, and they're all beige, And that makes a difference. We might even think it doesn't, but it helps us find our place inside, too. There, at the Women's Center, we have this habit with the girls, a custom, of saying the way your wardrobe is, that's how your soul is too. From the beginning, we've tried to say this. Look, if your wardrobe is all messed up, all disorganized, it's a sign that your soul is like that too. Then sometimes we might think like this, right? Oh, but so it's about harmony. We have to first create it inside and then outside, right? But things go hand in hand. Harmony, it goes hand in hand. Sometimes you're not feeling well inside. So go look at your wardrobe. Organize your wardrobe. See how it is. Tidy up your house. Start cleaning the house. Start putting things in order in the living room, the kitchen, And you'll see that little by little, peace will also come inside. Harmony will come inside too. Things start falling into place. And the opposite is true as well, Sometimes we're feeling good inside, but the house is a mess. And one thing isn't in sync with the other, and you'll see that all of a sudden things will start to fall apart on the other side too. So if you start tidying up your house, your wardrobe too, you'll also start to tidy up inside. Stopping to do adoration, that's part of harmony. Sometimes I'm so restless. There are so many things inside me making me agitated. I stop and go to the chapel. That's not just living spirituality, but also living in harmony. I want to find myself again in peace. I want to find balance inside once more. I usually tell the girls that when I go to the chapel for adoration, it's as if during that time I'm there in adoration, God puts me back together. Like He puts me back on track, puts me back at the center. He lets me be balanced again. I'm a witness to how when we focus on harmony, it transforms things, How? I see here, for example, in the Pedrinha's kitchen, how the boys are always there, present, going around cleaning, quickly picking up the plates, trying to wipe the tables fast. And you see one group comes in, another leaves, but there's this harmony because the focus was put on that. So we see how harmony is part of our lives, right? Then, as we talk many times, right? There's no point in having a beautiful, harmonious house, a gorgeous garden, wonderful furniture if our hearts aren't in the right place, right? If, for example, we want to have that beautiful, harmonious house, but we don't want anyone to mess it up, so then no one can use it, you see? So we realize that it's really important that our harmony should be a service. The harmony in our homes should always be to serve, to welcome someone who arrives, to welcome that person, to welcome the one who is recovering, to welcome that visitor, to welcome that family, to welcome that volunteer. So harmony in our lives also only makes sense if we live with detachment and service. If I make use of all this harmony, which God gives me the grace to have, to create, so that it may be a service, so that it may be detachment in my life, so that it is not a way for me to hold on to things, for example. I look at Klaus and Jenny Ann's house. They tried to build a house now together, but with so much harmony. There are mirrors there because there's the dance room and everything. So I see it like this very easily. Klaus and Jenny Ann could have said, there can't be dancing here because otherwise the mirrors on the wall will get broken. You can't do it. Such and such group can't come here because otherwise they'll damage what we've put here. But no, they opened their home. They opened their home. For Arte Esperanza, which is the Arte Esperanza series at their house, they opened their home for men's group meetings, for women's group meetings, for coordinators meetings, For this, for that, for so many things I've already seen. So to swim in the pool, Claudio is reminding me there, I saw the kids there. So that's when it really makes sense for us to have a harmonious and beautiful home. Once I thought like this, right, when we moved to the house where I lived, I thought we need to, because until we moved there, our houses were always small. We lived in the boys' first screening house, which was in the city, and it was a house completely lacking harmony still. We tried to make it work. Then we lived in that house, which was already better, the one Irene built right next to our house where Anderson is going to live. And then we moved to that house. New? We managed with the project, with a lot of difficulty, we managed to do it. So it's also about striving so that what God gives us, what is beautiful, what is harmonious, can become a service, can become an act of detachment as well, not just for us. I also remember, for example, when Bernardo, Aninha, and Zeluise's son was born, and then we thought he was born right next door, started crawling in our house, started walking in our house. So people would say that, wow, but your house is always so tidy, and now you're bringing a child here, things are going to start getting broken, this and that. But the love we had for welcoming that child, it was so great that not for a single moment did it cross our minds that something in the house might get broken. And so to welcome with that motherly, grandmotherly love, with everything, but to welcome with so much joy. Then another experience is that even when we receive something that isn't harmonious, that's broken, that has nothing to do with our lives in terms of beauty or harmony, for example, recently in Guatemala, we got there and the house wasn't ready, right? So we went to see where we would stay, to rent a house to stay in, right? So Moises had already seen some houses with Father Vidal and so on, and we looked and thought, look, we can rent this house here that's ready. It'll be 2,500 quetzals. We can check out that one, we can check out the other one, right? Like that. But then we realized that Father Carlos had a house there in San Miguel de Chica, right? Old, abandoned, as you saw in the video, in the presentation yesterday, right? But when we went to see it, even though that house was old and abandoned, we felt that was the place that we should stay there. First, because it was right in the middle of the people, among those indigenous people who had already welcomed the men's farm. Second, because it was Father Carlos's house, who was the first parish priest to welcome the farm there, and who has all this passion for the farm. And third, because we could live that detachment there of also transforming that environment, right, Juliana? And so we felt right away, no, this is the house that has the calling for us to stay, to welcome the missionaries. It's this house here, right? So Juliana, Paula, Carol, and I went running, along with the boys, as was mentioned yesterday, to transform that environment, to make it harmonious. And I think we did it, right? Because everyone who arrived, even our chapel, right? The friar said something that really touched me. When the friar got there, because someone had arrived before and said, but you're crazy. Who gave you permission to have a chapel here in this house? Just like that, you know? Oh, it was the parish priest who gave us permission. We asked the priest for authorization and he said it was okay. But it's a tent, especially since we put up a tent and the tent doesn't have any walls, right? So it's just the top part, right? So we thought about using the curtains we had bought for the bedrooms as the walls of the chapel. So we fastened them with brooches there. At first we used clothespins and hung the curtains up. Later, we bought those pins you use for baby diapers and put them there. We ran a pipe along the bottom like this because otherwise the curtain would flip over. Where the curtain rod goes, we put it at the bottom. And we placed the stones like this. But our desire to have Jesus there, to make that place harmonious, was so strong, you know? The vase we bought for decoration, we used to make the tabernacle. Then there was something we bought for the candle and we put the vase on top of it. It became the stand for the tabernacle. So each thing, the living room rug, we put it on the chapel floor and we put a plastic sheet underneath. So it was transforming and we realized that was what we had for Jesus. We gave the best we had. And it was so beautiful that later when people arrived, Father Vidal, even the friar himself, the friar was impressed. He said something that really stuck with me. He said, look, this tent is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You shouldn't even take down this tent. It's so beautiful. The chapel, you know? Because you did it in a simple way, but you prepared the place for Jesus. And how harmonious it was. And we didn't even think about it, but later on, even the colors matched, right? Because we bought curtains for one room in one color and for the other room in another color, you know? But then the rug we had on the floor was exactly the same colors as the curtains, and it wasn't even planned, right? But it's like the desire to live this harmony for Jesus also ends up arranging things. And it really became a very beautiful environment. So we see that this also needs to be expressed in our lives. It's part of our lives. There is simply no possible way that we can truly live a life of actively choosing to follow God if we do not first live in this essential inner and outer harmony.
I remember when we were in Vietnam, I was visiting a hospital, talking with the director, the doctor who was very famous for acupuncture, to see if he could help with the recovery. Because at that time, you have to understand, we were always more focused on recovery. And the doctor received us very kindly. We had a good translator and we were able to talk quite a bit, but after half an hour, he was called to attend to some young people who were hospitalized there, having attacks, in tremendous pain, screaming, and really, with acupuncture, he quickly relieved their pain. For us, it was impressive. But after seeing this scene so many times, I said, Doctor, we have been working at that time for 15 years with Drug addicts never have this thing where they are shaking and screaming. I don't know, could it be that? Is it another type of drug? He laughed a little, took a sheet of paper and said, no, if you don't have this, then you have the following things. And he wrote on the paper, first thing, a place full of harmony. Then a place full of responsibility. And you have people who are willing to talk. You have work. And he listed everything that we have. I said, yes, doctor, we have that. Then he said, well, of course, it's very simple. The body produces, it is a natural chemical substance called an endorphin, which is known as an endorphin. And this relieves pain. Everyone has this in their body, some a little more, others less, so some feel more pain, others feel less pain. It depends on how much the body produces. Now, when you take drugs, the body says, I don't need to produce it because the drug takes away the pain, and you feel happy, you feel light, you feel good. But now, when someone decides to stop, that's when the pain starts. And there, in Vietnam, they use acupuncture to relieve the pain. In Europe, in general, they use methadone. It's a substitute to relieve the pain. And you, he says, you have all of this. So, what happens when a young person comes here? Unconsciously, he says, ah, so beautiful, what a lovely thing, a room. The next day, he's already responsible for taking care of one thing or another. There are people who listen, who have conversations. Then the will to live returns and production starts again. And they don't feel the pain. So I saw that the one who before, sometimes I thought to myself, am I not being a bit too much with this obsession for harmony? I used to get upset when someone cut down a tree, honestly. I thought, but here I understood, no, there is a reason, there is a meaning. For these young people, they soon come back to life. Harmony is something extraordinary. Afterwards, constantly, I often meet parents and various visitors who come here and immediately start saying, how absolutely beautiful, what perfect harmony, what a truly extraordinary thing. You can really feel it deep down, and they even go so far as to say that you can sense the presence of God here. Then God is harmony. So we can evangelize through the things we build through harmony. And there's no need to speak. And in today's world where words, it has become something so trivial. Everyone talks, television, radio, everyone talks and speaks beautifully, but they don't act. Words have almost become like inflation. So there is no real commitment, but the word itself is God. So without speaking, you communicate God through harmony. So for me, it's extremely important that we take care of harmony. And if I go to the farms at the time, I don't say anything, okay, but later, usually I do speak up. I suffer when there is no harmony. When the rooms are dirty, when it seems like something is missing, and when people talk, this argument comes up. There's no money. Mercy, there's no money. When you want to do something for God, it seems like He Himself helps you find the money. You need to have this clear vision. I create harmony for God and I do it for others, which becomes a way of evangelizing. Silently, Marian, in a way like Mary does. You don't even need to speak. You already communicate our life through harmony. And then, to finish for me, it was a particular joy. I don't know how to thank God. When the Holy Father spoke in December about harmony, he spoke about the beauty of the mountains. And he, even as he spoke in that very moment, in a completely new way, I truly understood the profound role that nature has in conveying something incredibly beautiful, something truly divine. To protect, it is an entire vision that he gave for this extraordinary nature. And he once thoughtfully remarked, we should nurture and care for this sacred place not only for our own personal benefit, but truly for its own sake, because it constantly brings a profound and timeless message for all of humanity. This inspiring text is located right at the main entrance of the church. You can easily read it for yourself when you visit. So for me, this divine harmony is truly meant to bring the presence of God into our world. Now we constantly encounter this internal conflict even out on the farms. We struggle with how to build properly, how to do things the right way, and we wonder if maybe it could be more economical, much simpler, or even cheaper. And sometimes we eventually give in and say, okay, go ahead, you can do it that way. But I always regretted it, always, because afterwards the house is there for a lifetime. And if it isn't harmonious, it's for a lifetime too. And the expense, the cost of a beautiful house and a simple house isn't very different. Sometimes someone who doesn't know how to build, and any architect, male or female, sometimes makes something simple and more expensive because it lacks the whole dimension of harmony. For example, the other day I went to a place, there was a huge bathroom. You could make 2 bathrooms out of that one. So much tile, so many materials were used. Whereas houses built with harmony, with space, exactly what you need, you feel good and you save money. It's not more expensive, on the contrary. In our accounting, we can approve things that are done in harmony together. Sometimes the wood is sourced from far away. We even make it ourselves in the carpentry shop. In the end, our houses end up being much cheaper than others that are built any old way. Now it's true, there's always a danger of attachment or of going overboard, of not finding the balance where it's harmonious and beautiful and where vanity starts to come in, the desire for luxury, for comfort, for something to admire, to show off. So we always need to see where the limit is. I think here only Jesus among us can help, because everyone is different. We have some people who are very easygoing and laid back, for whom almost anything will do. And we have other people who have a bit of a tendency toward vanity, who are a little... So it's necessary, with Jesus among us, to always remember that it is God's goodness. And something that always helps me to remember is that everything we have comes from donations. Some from our work, but a lot from Providence. So someone gave it. So we are responsible before God for how we use this money. So I can't just use it for myself. For example, when a new car arrives, someone donated to an institution and we managed to get a new car. For me, the sign of whether you can or cannot have this car is when you are able to lend it with joy or when you don't want to lend it. When it pains you to lend it, you've already let it get into your head. An attachment that says, the car is mine, someone might damage it. So it's true that someone might damage it, and my car is a living example of that. It always comes back to me when someone has hit it, when someone used up the gas, when it's empty, when there's something wrong. Just the other day, I heard it seems a stone broke something. In general, no one says anything, okay? So it's a source of suffering. And there's a tendency to say, I'm not going to lend it to anyone anymore. But the moment we stop lending it, when we're really not able to share it, that's when there's an attachment. And we can't get attached to anything. What really helps me to always remember is that we are not owners, we are administrators, and one day we will have to account for everything we've done, both good and bad. What we've done with things, with nature, with everything. That's why everyone, always in the face of everything, you should present yourself or approach it, just as you approach God Himself. He is behind everything. Behind everything. Especially in nature, I easily find God. Because who else could create something like nature? I remember as a child how many times I think I tested my father's patience, wanting explanations he couldn't give. I would ask Dad, but how is it possible? How can a tree with white flowers, yellow flowers, grow out of this black earth? How is it possible? I wanted to know how hard wood comes from soft earth. that you can use to make furniture. I wanted to know how such a huge tree grows without leaving a hole in the ground. I wanted to know how it's possible that every year that sweet apple has the same taste, the same color, the same shape. My father tried to explain it as a chemical process and all that. For a child, it was hard to understand. Even today, I don't want to understand, I want to admire. To me, every seed already contains a computer. The very thing that humans later invented as computers is already inside every seed. And God made it. And out comes that leaf, that color, that same fruit, every year, always again, and always so much, so much. Just imagine how many tons of mangoes each tree produces, and they come from this black earth, so sweet, so delicious. So for me, it's a constant miracle from God. And we shouldn't change it, we should become part of it. The moment we enter into God's harmony, that harmony enters into us. And we begin to feel like a part of God, to feel like a part of this nature. And then it seems natural for you to return to it. Your body returns to the earth because it comes from the earth. We are also part of nature. And this body, which was divinized, when it returns to the earth, divinizes the earth. It transforms the earth into a new earth and a new heaven. But today it returns to the earth, and by being this instrument that transforms the earth and is also welcomed by the earth and returns to heaven, here body and soul are united, heaven and earth. It is a great mystery of communion that perhaps we do not understand, but we can already live. Now, those who do not respect the earth and only exploit the earth and they only think about profit. When I see the Amazon so often exploited just for human greed, it is painful. It seems that the person is lost with themselves because we are part of this cosmos, we are part of the earth, we are part of God. There is a harmony within us, so we cannot separate it. What God has united. I don't know if you fully understand yet, but there is something very important I must say. May each and every one of our individual farms truly become a beautiful paradise. You must spend your precious time, spend your deep intelligence, and spend your honest sweat to create this wonderful paradise on earth. And if we pass this on to the young people and they work together, I saw this in Guatemala, we called the boys, because I saw that the girls were at the end of their strength, right? Don't let me lie, but I saw that they were being kind, planting and finishing, but they had no more strength left. And there the grass is not like it is here. There the sod comes in slabs, almost like this table, and long, heavy. So we called the men, and together they started to carry and plant together everything. That happiness, seeing everything finished afterwards. But they sweat a lot. And it seems that with this sweating, the drugs also leave their bodies. After so many years, things, aggressions, temptations, so many human things leave you, and the earth gives you back what you need, that peace, that harmony. The earth is something divine, an extraordinary therapy. That's why we always say in recovery, you need to have the land, especially at the beginning, to plant, to sweat, and to use the hoe, even if at first you hold it more than you actually use it. But it's good for you, it helps a lot. And then the animals, like Lucia mentioned, the piglets. It's amazing how these piglets bring people together. Suddenly someone calls out and everyone goes over to see and take care of them. And they're so worried about them not dying, fighting to save their lives. This also makes you value your own life. If you fight to save the lives of animals, how much do you also value your own life? Of course, we know they don't have a soul and they're animals, but between the animal and us, there's a love that you've invested, a love and affection, and that makes you suffer. And this suffering shouldn't be attachment, it has to be an offering. And at the moment you offer it, nature also becomes ever more present within us. We are much more nature than we want to admit. Some people like to be divine. Sometimes when you go to a convent, to places of prayer, I don't know, everyone wants to be divine. They forget that they're human, and that's why it doesn't work out. You can never abandon your humanity, which is part of me. I really liked it when Klaus took communion yesterday. He said that this time of suffering in his humanity made him grow. He is who he is today because of this. We cannot exclude our humanity, and it makes us suffer. It makes others suffer, without a doubt. How often do we suffer because of the actions of one person or another? You must have suffered a lot because of my actions, and so each one suffers. But to embrace this humanity, I don't want to live with people who think they're little angels. That's for heaven. Here on earth, we have both things, and that makes me content. It makes me happy that we have the mission to enter this world, to embrace it without getting lost in it, to transform it. With what? With all our being, all our intelligence, with our humanity and our divinity. Not to separate the two things. Of course, it often brings us across. I often feel crucified between the human and the divine. But to increase both, this way we unite the world. Those who are far away, those who perhaps no longer know, God, this way we will unite. When they see, they are fully human, they live in this world, they have a house, they have a car, they dress in modern clothes, and they are trying to love whoever comes. But at the same time, they are free, they are not attached, they can be transferred to the Philippines. They can be transferred to Guatemala, like Veronica and Ana Paula are going. Why? Why are they going? Because they feel that someone is needed here. There was no one else, so they made themselves available. That is detachment, that is beautiful. This to me is divinity. To embody God's goodness wherever it is needed, and to serve with the abilities we have. And what abilities do I have? I can pray, I can say goodbye to you, I can forgive sins, but I can also plant with you. I can also cook, I can also create harmony in the home. We must be entirely ourselves. Do you understand? God didn't do it that way. In heaven, you might ask, why didn't you make me human? Why am I not divine? How many times have I said to him, but my God, with ordination, you could have given me strength and changed me and taken away other temptations and everything. But God didn't do it. Why not? In heaven I will understand better. But you already discover. He allows all of humanity within me so I can understand others, but all divinity as well to understand others. So we need to say yes to ourselves as we are. Each one needs to say yes. Nature teaches me this. A rose is a rose and a daisy is a daisy, and each one is beautiful. So the rose shouldn't want to be better than the others, and each one should accept being this flower in God's garden. We should all be one big garden. This was beautiful to me when Julian died, the first one who died from the tractor, and I was anguished by his death. Naturally first, and what society will say, and especially the mother, who already had another son in prison, a father who had already died in prison, and another daughter living under the bridge. Colata lived this kind of life in this big world, and another one who was married, but Julian was doing well. Converted, recovered, joyful, happy. Anyone who knew him would say he was a man who made you feel good. Even Christian, who wanted to stay here for a few months. He found in Julian a brother he never had. He only had 2 sisters. And one day he decided, I'm going to stay 1 more year. And he found his vocation as a priest through Julian. But then God allowed him to die. And how to face this mother? For me it was an anguish. I was in Brasilia, I took a plane to get there. When I arrived, she saw me. She came out among the young people near the tomb, near the coffin. She hugged me and said, "Thank you for the flower you prepared for God's garden." This son of mine God could call, the others not yet. So she understood each one is a flower. And this flower needs to live out all its beauty. So each one has to accept themselves as they are and live out their mission. Sixth flower in this garden. And then we complete it with the other flowers, and that's how it becomes beautiful. Do you understand? Thank you.